aired once, and then it vanished. No reruns. No official explanation. No trace in the network archives. For decades, television historians and collectors have whispered about a single episode of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson that seems to have been erased from history. Not misplaced, not forgotten, erased. Even more strange, the network that broadcast it, NBC, has never publicly addressed what happened that night. No apology. No clarification. No acknowledgement that anything unusual occurred at all. Yet for the handful of viewers who claim they saw it live, the memory never faded, because what they witnessed was not just an awkward interview or a guest behaving badly. According to those accounts, it was something far more unsettling, something that forced one of the most powerful television networks in America to scramble behind the scenes and attempt to bury the entire episode forever. The question that has haunted late-night television lore ever since is simple. What could possibly happen on a talk show that would make a network want to pretend the broadcast never existed, and more importantly, what was said that night that someone somewhere still doesn't want the public to hear? To understand the mystery, you first have to understand the man at the center of it all. For 3 decades, Johnny Carson was the undisputed king of late-night television. Night after night, millions of viewers tuned in to watch his effortless humor, his relaxed interviews, and the unpredictable parade of celebrities who joined him on stage. Carson had a rare ability to make guests comfortable. Actors, musicians, politicians, almost anyone who sat beside him eventually relaxed into the rhythm of the show. Even awkward interviews usually ended with laughter. But there was one night when that rhythm broke. A night when Carson, known for his calm and quick wit, reportedly lost control of the conversation in a way viewers had never seen before. And according to scattered eyewitness accounts, the moment it happened, everyone in the room realized something had gone terribly wrong. It began like any other evening. The curtain opened. The band played the familiar theme. The audience applauded as Carson walked onto the stage with the confident ease that had made him a household name. To anyone tuning in that night, nothing seemed unusual at first. The monologue moved along smoothly. The jokes landed. The crowd laughed. But behind the scenes, tension had already begun to build. Earlier that evening, producers had reportedly been dealing with a problem involving the show's first guest. The actor scheduled to appear that night was not unknown to the program. He had been on the show before. In fact, he had built much of his public persona on being unpredictable and charming in interviews. Audiences loved his wild stories and off-the-cuff humor. But there was also another reputation that followed him quietly through Hollywood. He had a habit of arriving to events in less than perfect condition. According to several later accounts from people who claimed to work behind the scenes, the actor arrived at the studio that evening noticeably late. And when he finally walked through the doors, something immediately felt off. His speech was slurred, his movements unsteady. Crew members who encountered him in the hallway later recalled that he smelled strongly of alcohol. At first, some assumed it might just be nerves. Live television can make even experienced performers anxious. But as the minutes passed, it became increasingly clear that this was not a case of simple stage fright. The actor seemed disoriented. He wandered through the backstage area speaking loudly to people he barely knew. At one point, according to a former staff member who later discussed the night anonymously, the guest began telling strange stories about famous figures in the entertainment industry. Stories that were personal. Stories that sounded far too revealing for a live broadcast. When word reached Carson's dressing room, the host reportedly grew concerned. Carson had seen difficult guests before, but he had also built strict rules about professionalism on his set. Late-night television might look casual on screen, but behind the curtain it ran with careful precision. Every segment had a rhythm. Every interview had boundaries. And if those boundaries collapsed, the consequences could be unpredictable. According to one longtime staff member who spoke years later, Carson asked producers a direct question before the show began. Was the guest fit to appear on television? The answer he received was uncertain. Canceling the segment would create chaos. Tickets had been distributed. The audience was already filling the studio. There was no replacement guest ready to take the spot. In the end, the decision was made to continue with the show. But what happened next would become the beginning of one of television's strangest mysteries. When the actor finally stepped onto the stage, the audience greeted him with polite applause. To viewers watching at home, he may have seemed slightly unusual, perhaps overly energetic or distracted. But those sitting in the studio sensed something deeper. Before Carson even finished introducing him, the guest began speaking. Not responding to questions, not waiting for conversation, just talking. He jumped from story to story with erratic enthusiasm, interrupting Carson repeatedly. At first, the audience laughed. It looked like a bit, a comedian exaggerating his personality for entertainment. But then the tone changed. The guest began referencing people in the industry by name. Producers, executives, actors. Some of the stories he told were awkward. Others were strange. And a few, according to those who later described the moment, crossed into territory that made the room fall completely silent. Carson attempted to steer the conversation toward safer topics. He asked lighter questions. He tried to redirect the discussion, but the guest ignored every attempt. Instead, he leaned forward and told the audience he wanted to explain how things really worked behind the scenes in Hollywood. That was the moment when the laughter stopped. What he said next has never been confirmed publicly, but multiple witnesses who later spoke about the broadcast described the same reaction from Carson. The host's posture suddenly changed. His relaxed smile disappeared, and for a brief moment, he looked directly toward the cameras with an expression viewers had rarely seen from him before. Concern. Some claim the guest then leaned closer and whispered something off microphone. Something only Carson could hear. Whatever it was, the effect was immediate. Carson froze. He said nothing. He simply leaned back in his chair and stared at the guest. A few seconds later, the broadcast abruptly cut to commercial. For some viewers, the show returned with a completely different segment already in progress. In other regions, the episode ended early without explanation. Across the country, confused viewers called their local television stations asking what had happened. But no one had an answer. And within hours, something even stranger began to occur. The episode disappeared, not just from reruns, from the official broadcast records. Inside the offices of NBC, staff members reportedly received a simple instruction the following morning. If anyone asked about the episode, they were to say it had been a scheduling error. No further details. No discussion. According to several former employees who later spoke about the event anonymously, internal memos circulated ordering that the master tape of the broadcast be removed from the archive. Technicians were reportedly instructed to destroy the recording. For a network known for preserving thousands of hours of television history, the order was highly unusual. Entire seasons of late-night programming had been carefully cataloged. Yet this single episode was treated as if it had never existed. One former archivist later claimed that he hesitated before following the order. He understood the value of historical footage, but he also understood the pressure coming from higher levels within the network. Eventually, the tape was said to have been erased. Or, at least, that is the official story. Because in the years that followed, rumors began to surface suggesting that a copy might have survived. Some believed an engineer had secretly preserved a duplicate before the original was destroyed. Others claimed a private recording had been made by a viewer watching at home. For a long time, those theories remained little more than speculation, until fragments began appearing in unexpected places. Decades after the broadcast, a small online forum dedicated to vintage television suddenly hosted a strange upload. The clip was short, less than half a minute, but viewers who saw it immediately recognized the setting. There was Carson behind his desk, sitting unusually still. Off camera, a voice could be heard speaking rapidly in a slurred tone. The video quality was poor, and the audio distorted. But one phrase seemed almost clear. They all knew and said nothing. Within 24 hours, the clip vanished. The account that posted it was deleted. No one ever identified who uploaded it. A few years later, another fragment surfaced. This time it wasn't video. It was a single still photograph. The image showed Carson standing beside his desk rather than sitting, his face tense and serious. Collectors debated its authenticity. Some insisted it was genuine. Others claimed it had been fabricated. But the mystery surrounding the lost episode only grew. Meanwhile, something else began to attract attention: the career of the guest at the center of the incident. Before that night, he had been a recognizable figure in film and television. Afterward, his presence in Hollywood seemed to fade with remarkable speed. Projects he was attached to quietly disappeared. A television pilot he was rumored to be developing was suddenly canceled. Public appearances became rare. And when journalists asked about his past appearances on Carson's show, the actor reportedly refused to discuss them. Years later, during a rare interview, he reportedly offered a cryptic response. "That night ruined everything," he said. Then he ended the conversation. For fans of television history, the unanswered questions continued to grow. Why had the network reacted so aggressively? Why destroy the episode rather than simply editing it? And why did the few fragments that appeared online seem to disappear so quickly? One theory suggested that the guest had revealed confidential information about powerful figures in the entertainment industry. Another suggested something even stranger, that he had accused specific individuals of wrongdoing while cameras were rolling. Without the full recording, there was no way to confirm any of it. But one thing remained clear. Whatever was said that night frightened someone enough to try to erase it completely. Even decades later, attempts to investigate the missing episode have reportedly faced unusual obstacles. One documentary filmmaker claimed he was granted access to extensive late-night television archives while researching a retrospective project. But when his outline included a brief mention of the missing episode, the access was abruptly revoked. No explanation was given. Other researchers have reported similar experiences. Requests for information were denied. Questions were left unanswered. Meanwhile, the legend of the lost broadcast has only continued to grow. Collectors still search for surviving recordings. Historians still debate what might have happened during that interview. And somewhere, according to persistent rumors, a complete copy of the episode may still exist, hidden in a private collection, locked away in an archive, or sitting on a forgotten tape in someone's attic. If that recording ever surfaces, it could finally reveal the truth about one of television's most mysterious nights. Until then, the story remains suspended between history and rumor. A single episode that aired once, a conversation that may have exposed something powerful, and a network that still seems determined to keep the full story buried. Because after all these years, one question refuses to disappear. What exactly was said on that stage that night that made an entire broadcast vanish forever?